G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to be concluding, at this point in time, I guess the Mechanoids Hero series, and looking at the 5-star legendary green hero, Gearbox, the efficient surveillance robot. Now, this is a little bit after I released all of the other Mechanoid videos, but if you're just binge watching them, then you won't notice any difference. But I did accidentally make some massive mistakes in my previous review of Gearbox, which I picked up too late to redo the recording. So, yeah, Gearbox is, as we can see, a Mechanoid hero. You can summon him from the Mechanoid Menace portal, which rolls around once every 8 weeks, because it is in a monthly appearance slot, but it alternates between the two Alliance events. So there's the Monster Island and the Mechanoid events. Gearbox is probably one of what you'd consider a newer hero into the Mechanoid Menace family. He was added only in April 2022 alongside Cutlass and Shutdown, roughly a year after the initial release of the event back in March 2021. The portal has been expanded again in June 2023 when they added Mastodon, but otherwise it is a fairly compact portal, all things considered. The portal itself, it does not have any featured heroes, which does mean that the Mechanoid summon is a little bit reduced in the net odds. Typically for the featured hero portals, we do see a slight improvement. It's like 1% and 0.6% chance, which is higher than the 1.2% chance that we can see here on the Mechanoid portal. That does also mean that the likelihood of summoning Gearbox is as much as any of the others, so it is a little bit more difficult to summon for him specifically. So if we were to put that in perspective, over 100 summons in this portal, you would have a 70% probability of gaining any of the legendary heroes from the portal. But if you're targeting a specific Mechanoid legendary hero like Gearbox, you do have only a 10.3% probability of gaining Gearbox off those 100 summons. So not the greatest odds, as I mentioned, because there's no featured heroes in the portal. If we do have a quick look at his artwork, I'll just flip over to that now. Alright, so here's his artwork. Thank you to Echo5250 for passing this one along a little while ago now, but this is Gearbox's artwork. So it is worth pointing out that most of the newer Mechanoid heroes are probably gender neutral, but for some reason in my head, I sort of go, that robot would be totally voiced by a male actor if it was made into a movie. So that's why you'll hear me refer to Gearbox as a he or a him or a his a lot of the time, but you're free to make your own gender assumptions if you wish. But yeah, so that's his artwork. He is a efficient surveillance robot, so he's got, like, I guess the red eye of surveying things, I guess. I don't know. It's like the cameras in the shopping centers where it's got just that little red blinking light. That's sort of his surveillance, I guess. But otherwise, he's got some cool artwork. I think in the scheme of things, he's got a lot of hollow outs and like a lightweight exoskeleton in some of the protective areas. So yeah, that's his artwork. He does obviously feature the camo, which is necessary for any surveillance at all. So yeah, let's just jump back across and we can keep checking out his card. Alrighty, so next thing to have a look at is his family bonus. So he is a member of the Mechanoid family, which means that Gearbox is granted a 12, 18, 24, or 30% chance to execute a support attack against the main target of an ally's special skill. So that percentage chance is related to if there is a 2, 3, 4, or 5 unique Mechanoid heroes in the battle. So a support attack, for those that don't know, it's just a 100% strike against the selected target. So in this case, if you target an enemy with a sniper, there's also a X percentage chance that Gearbox will do a 100% strike against them as well. There is also a stat bonus for using Gearbox or any other Mechanoid hero in the Mechanoid Menace event. So that's equating to a 4, 8, 12, 16, or 20% attack and defense stat improvement when there are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 unique Mechanoid heroes in your team. So notably, that stat bonus only applies when you use them in the Mechanoid family event, the Mechanoid event stages. It doesn't apply in any other stage of the game. In terms of Gearbox's personal stats, he comes in with 733 attack, 759 defense, and 1,336 HP. So in terms of a skew, the only skewing that's going on is actually from the HP towards both the attack and defense stats. So the HP is a little bit down from where it should be compared to his power, and the attack and the defense stats are a little bit improved, which is a little bit disappointing for Gearbox, seeing as he is a minion generating hero. For most minion makers, you want that defense stat, that HP stat to be as absolutely high as possible. So preferably, we would have seen the skewing going the other way towards the health, but anyway, the other thing to really note is the power creep. So Gearbox is 709 at total power, as opposed to Topaz, who comes in with 742. So there is a bit of a stat distribution there, because power is just a relationship of the total base stats. So more power means more total stats to distribute amongst the three stats there. Gearbox's charge speed is set to 46, which is average speed and requires 11 tiles to charge, or 6 ghosted tiles. The speed break does happen at speed 50, which needs a +4 speed improvement, which you can do using the speed gun. So green has only one speed gun, which is the Relic Hunter Bargo, and it gives you a +6 speed improvement. Now, the speed node, as a result, is not overly relevant. It will not give you the speed break on its own, but it is relevant, I guess, if you have an unleveled copy of the Relic Hunter Bargo. So I personally, I wouldn't be getting the speed node for a variety of reasons, but yeah. In terms of his class, Gearbox is a member of the support class, which grants him the chance to withstand negative status effects as well as charge cutting effects. So it is a fairly decent perk, I think, because it grants you a chance towards ailment immunity. It can be used for any ailments like DOT, it can be stats, it can be charge control ailments as well. All of those can be reduced, and it's got the added bonus as well of being able to resist, or withstand rather, charge cuts from heroes like Dragon Fist or Attk and that kind of thing. So a very useful effect. It's kind of like an inverse of the recon talent. So the withstand talent, you will take damage but be able to withstand charge cuts and ailments, whereas the recon talent, you would evade damage but take the ailments and get a little bit of free charge. So it's kind of the inverse of that one. By way of an actual emblem path, I'll just flip over and find a support hero real quick. Alright, so by way of an emblem path, ignore the fact that this says booster. I would personally be going a defense and HP path, prioritizing HP over defense because he is a minion generator. So what that would look like, you can see I've sort of started the path on booster here, but we would continue that path down. So we are picking HP as the priority with defense as our secondary stat. So you can see there's a couple instances where I have chosen the HP node over the defense. So here you can see that choice, and we have chosen the HP in order to maximize his minions stats. Basically, you could make an argument to just go on an attack route to increase his damage output, but his damage isn't great, so I'd rather focus on the fact that he makes some chunky minions and go that route instead. So that's the path that I would follow for booster. Sorry, not for booster, for Gearbox. As noted, I'm not going any further than +18. The 19 and 20 nodes aren't any use and to him at all. So an argument can be made to not give him any emblems because he's not a great hero, but you know, that ultimately comes down to your hero availability in the end. Cool. All right, heading back over to his card, and we can take a look at his special skill. So Gearbox's special skill is titled Guardian Drones, and at level 10 skill and 46 charge speed, it will deal 295% damage to the target, with a potential additional 50% damage if the target has armor. It will then summon a drone robot minion for the for the caster and nearby allies for 20% of his health, with 10% attack inherited from Gearbox's stats. The minion will add 60 armor to its owner at the end of each turn, and finally, the caster and nearby allies are granted a plus 94% defense against red buff for the next 3 turns. So breaking that apart a little bit, we've kind of got both damage and healing to have a look at. So we'll start with the damage component as it is the first part of his skill. Damage is easy enough to calculate, but to simplify the comparison and remove the variability from the calculation, I compare heroes based on their attack power normalized against their speed. It is analogous in the end to the final damage output, so it just simplifies the comparison. So in the case of Gearbox, his attack power is 733 multiplied by 2.95 or 295%. And we can see that that comes out with an attack power per tile of just 197, which is really, really bad for a sniper. Like you can see on the green list there, it comes in 11th of the options. With, you've got notable ones above him. Minamoto against armor is the highest option, but you've got other ones out there like Fiddle at 291. You've also got Mantis coming in at 277. You've got Von Hagen, who is a super ultra slow hero, comes in at 232. By comparison, Gearbox's best damage is against an armored enemy at 230 attack power per tile. So he's not great as a damage dealing hero, and ultimately, green as well has some pretty poor snipers. They're not known for their snipers. It's not a renowned class. And as a result, Gearbox actually comes in at number 66 of the snipers in the game. So there's 86 snipers across all of the 5-star heroes, and Gearbox comes in at 66th of all of those options, which is not very good at all. At all. So yeah, not a great sniper. As I said, you've got some of the best ones in the game, like Dynasty's just been added. She comes in with an attack power per tile of 498 compared to 197. So yeah, not a great damage dealer, ultimately, is Gearbox. Moving on from the damage and shifting over our focus to the drone robot Minion. Now, this is ultimately a very beefy Minion, coming in at 20% health. It's also giving 60 armor per turn, per Minion as well. So if you've got 2 Minions active on the same hero, it's actually 120 armor that the hero gains per turn. So if we compare Gearbox as a pseudo healer, so he's not a direct healer, he's a pseudo healer, because it's like healing. But how we calculate that and compare them is we grab his healing, which is a minion for 267 HP. That's 20% of his base HP stat, and then multiply it by the range, which is 3, divided by the number of tiles, and we can see that his heal per tile comes out at just 73. Now, his minion is chunky, right? It comes in at 267. That is one of the more chunky minions in the game. There's a couple that are higher, that have got 25 or 30% health, but at 20%, it is very high. It's up there. Unfortunately for Gearbox, he is let down by the fact that he is only caster and nearby, which is unfortunate when you look at most of the other minion makers in the game are all allies. You can see there, Venus is way up the top because she's got less chunky minions at 224, but she's doing it to all allies, which very much improves her net heal per tile. The other thing to note as well is that 60 armor, yes, it's 60 armor per turn. However, it is not a great amount, right? If we look at Venus and Nima, Venus gives off 9% healing per turn. Nima gives off 7% healing per turn. Comparatively, Gearbox is doing only 60 armor per turn. So those percentages, if we turn them into healing, right, you can see there, Venus is doing 134 heal per turn. Gearbox is doing 60. Nima is doing 94 heal per turn. Gearbox is doing 60. So in all of the metrics you look at, yes, Gearbox has got a very good minion, but it is not a great effect because of his limited range and his limited speed. If we took away the green, if we stopped looking at it just in the vacuum of a green, and we did compare him to all of the minion makers in the game, all right, so you can see on this list, Gearbox is a fair way up the list, I guess. He's 7th of the 18 minion makers, which is good. Don't get me wrong, it's good, but a lot of those ones down the bottom there, you look at the bottom 5 from Wade down, those guys are only making a minion with 8% health. Gearbox is 20%. So it is a substantial drop off towards the bottom, but you can see as well, there are some minions that have got some pretty chunky numbers. Gearbox is in there at 267. There's not many others that are actually more chunky than him. There are some, you've got Mothor at 290, Nima at 288, Ramhorn is the highest at 373, and Monkey Wrench is the second highest at 324. But Gearbox's minions are pretty bulky, which is quite nice, ultimately. It is a little bit down when you do look at some of the options at the bottom of that list and consider how poor those heroes are. But ultimately, Gearbox, as a minion maker, ain't that bad, right? He's not that bad at all. Yeah, the other thing that I will sort of say, and I'm not going to show it, but as a pseudo, of all of the pseudo and direct healers in the game, Gearbox ranks as 39th of the 52 options, so not great there either, ultimately, but we saw that from the green options. The final part of his skill is the defense against red buff, so this is where the caster and nearby allies get plus 94% defense against red for 3 turns. So, notably, this only applies to red damage. It doesn't apply to any damage coming from other elements, so it will only apply to red tiles, skills or slash attacks coming from red enemies, minions that are actually equipped to a red hero. All of those will be given a 94% defense improvement. So note that as well. It is a defense improvement. When you run it through the damage calculation, it ends up being roughly a 48%, I think, decrease to the damage output. So yeah, it is still a substantial damage reduction. Sorry, a 56% damage reduction. So it is a substantial damage reduction, but it's not as big as the number implies at 94%. So that percentage, it is standard, right? 94% is the same as all of the other heroes that have a elemental defense buff, excepting Mayhem, who's only 48%, which is weird, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, Generally speaking, I find this skill to be a bit of a miss whenever I've encountered it or used it in the raid arenas. I've rarely encountered any notable uses for it because it is so limited in its application. Like, you think about it, it's only stopping red damage. There are 4 other elements, of which 3 of them are neutral. And even at the damage reduction, it comes out as being about the same as a neutral tile. In the end of it. So red damage against Gearbox is still going to be roughly the same as purple damage against him anyway. So it's not a hugely beneficial effect. Nima is a little bit exceptional in this regard, right? Nima is yellow. Yellow and purple are inherently opposite to each other. So Nima does have uses against war machines because you get a big damage reduction against the purple war machine. Gearbox doesn't get that, and neither do any of the other heroes, because you're not going to bring a green hero against a red war machine. It just doesn't make sense because it's not getting any strong, like, you're losing damage in that regard. So yeah, Gearbox with the it's not limited to just Gearbox. It's my criticism with all of the heroes that have this effect. I just don't find it to be very useful. So yeah, overall, Gearbox is a hero that sort of sits on the worst end of the spectrum. It doesn't matter which part of his skill you're looking at, it is somewhat subpar. His damage output, it's not great, right? There's not any way around it. His minion, while his minion is chunky and it's a good minion, it is limited in its range, and because it only applies to himself and his nearby allies, it does mean that he's not a very effective healer either. Alright, the elemental damage as well, reduction, it's not great. It doesn't really change anything. So if Gearbox's damage was AoE 3, so he did damage to the target and nearby, or his minion applied to all allies, I would actually say that he gains a lot of usability and his skill level actually goes up substantially. But in his current state, I do find Gearbox to be somewhat lacking. So because of that, for Gearbox grading, I'm going to give him a C+ for war and raid attack situations. He's not a great option. They're a little bit above average because of the amount of things that he does, but I'd pick most other green heroes to use in raiding before him. In the eventing, I'm going to give him a D+. He's a sniper. Yes, he's got minions, but it doesn't really help too much towards the event. For war machines, that is. So D+ against war machines. Similarly, in eventing, I'm going to give him a C-. There's not really anything he does towards events. If anything, he takes up a more useful hero spot. On the raid and war defenses, I'm going to give him a C grade. Best spot is probably in the flank position where he can charge and fire and give that chunky minion to support the tank and the wing. He could be workable as a tank during the green tank meta, but outside of this current meta, I probably wouldn't recommend him as a defensive tank. In the tournament settings, so in Bloody Battle, obviously there is no healing or armor generation, so he loses that a little bit from his minion, but minions are still permitted. So he does actually pick up a lot of usability as one of the few healers that's actually able to still be used in the Bloody Battle tournament setting. So I'm going to give him a B grade for Bloody Battle attack and a B- for Bloody Battle defense. In the buff boosters, I'm going to give him a C+ on attack and a C grade on defense. He's not, like, he does create a buff for himself and nearby, but not enough to really improve him, I don't think. Finally, in the charge tournament setting, which is where his speed is improved from 46 up to 65, it is a bit of a speed improvement. So again, I'm going to give him a B grade on charge tournament attack and a B- for charge tournament defense. So overall for Gearbox's grading, that comes out as being a C grade for his overall attack grade and a C+ for his overall defense grade. And that concludes the content that I have for this review of Gearbox. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback on them, so please do jump down to the comments section and leave me a note. I try to read and respond as much as I can. If you found this content to be good, useful, helpful, and all of that, feel free to like my video, subscribe to the channel and all of that, but definitely share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful to you, it's also going to be useful for the other people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon in another video, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!